Greetings, Dennis Fair, retired member of the Metropolitan Police Department, serving 29 years straight. Uninterrupted service from June the 4th of 1990 to June the 8th of 2019. Yes, 2019. 3 years retired. I couldn't have done it any better. Police brutality is here to stay. And I know you're probably looking like, wait, man, this is an odd topic coming from him. Well, it's a reality. Police brutality, and let me say it again, police brutality is here to stay. And of course, as we all know, these are my opinions. I'm not affiliated with any law enforcement agency, including the Metropolitan Police Department. My advice is not legal advice, so don't take anything I say and go try it in court because it may not work for you. Although some of the advice I give is damn good legal advice and I should charge, but I'm not. However, back to the topic, police brutality is here to stay. You probably ask yourself, how did I come up with a topic? How did I come up with a topic like that? Well, actually, there's a variety of topics I could have discussed, especially the violence in D.C. and just the surrounding areas. Maryland, Virginia is no better. There was a time when Virginia was, rare. Virginia police did not play, but now it's like this all over now because for the most part, law enforcement statewide, all over the United States has pretty much just dropped the flag, dropped the ball, threw in the towel. What it basically means is law enforcement isn't really proactive like they used to be. Now, I'm going to go to the topic at the hand. Police brutality is here to stay, and I'll tell you why I'm saying that. There was an incident recently among many incidents that you don't even know about. But I'm going to discuss the ones that you know about that were in the news. 295, vehicle off 295. Evidently, an individual pulled to the side, possibly on drugs, possibly alcohol, both, or maybe just tired, in a stolen vehicle. Evidently, a homeowner or somebody in the area called individual asleep. Park police responded because they do have a jurisdiction in some of the parks in the neighboring area off 295 and what have you, Kenilworth Parks, and all types of parks. They respond. It's a confirmed stolen vehicle. You got an individual sleep inside. It is occupied. At that time, it's not known, from what I understand, that there is a weapon inside, which later came out in the news, which really was not relevant to the park police entering the rear of the occupied stolen vehicle. At no given time are you trained or is any form of common sense to get inside of a occupied, confirmed stolen vehicle that's obviously occupied, and the driver has control of the vehicle because he's in the front seat. It's not like he's in the back seat sleep. Make a long story short, you can watch this video in its entirety. They do have it online. Park police, they walk around this vehicle for about, the video is almost like a movie. That's how long it is before they actually did something. Park police along with Metropolitan Police Department, I'm not going to leave them out either because they were on the scene. However, they made so much noise doing this video. If you watch the video, obviously that's the reason I kind of lean toward drugs or maybe alcohol. This individual, or maybe the individual was just that tired. They always say if you're going to do something stupid, don't be stupid about it. Well, falling asleep in a stolen vehicle that you stole, that's pretty stupid. But the individual never woke up. You can hear birds chirping. You can hear all types of noise. This is daylight. And at some point, I think you can hear the Metropolitan Police Department officer or sergeant, whoever was on the scene, state, if he pulls off, let him go. Park police doesn't have that same chase policy. Park police has a chase policy where they actually can chase. So they're not governed by the same policies of the Metropolitan Police Department. They're federal. They play by a whole different set of rules. So at some point in this video, you'll see why this individual gets in the rear of the vehicle. And obviously, it's a failure on every level, and I'm going to throw the Metropolitan Police Department in it as well. It's about at least 4 or maybe more officers. It's one individual. You all couldn't rip this individual out of this car if it meant breaking the window or doing whatever without him still being able to take off. It's just hesitation will get you killed or get you severely injured. There was hesitation on all the officers' parts. I could see it. You can tell nobody really wanted to go hands-on because of the climate in law enforcement now. Nobody wants to lose their job. Nobody wants to be unemployed rather, because it can happen in seconds if it doesn't look right to the mayor, if it doesn't look right to the chief of police. Now, I'm not saying it was right or wrong. If it doesn't look right to the mayor, and if it doesn't look right to the chief or any other public officials, they're not going to go against the grain and stand for the officers, especially the chief. I mean, like nothing personal, but he's in a political position, so he's not one of those Chief Fullwoods, if individuals remember the Chief Fullwood. He wasn't always politically correct. I mean, they asked him on the news years ago, and most of you probably won't remember this, well, what are you going to do about this incoming MS-13 gang that's supposed to be infiltrating D.C.? And I think this is before the MS-13s really were known. Chief Fullwood said, well, I'm not concerned about them. I got the biggest gang in D.C., Metropolitan Police Department. Now, that wasn't politically the right thing to say, and I'm sure some people will be offended. But basically what he was saying was he could care less about the MS-13s. The MS-13s want to go to war, we'll take them to war. Simple as that. And a lot of people are like, oh my God, I can't believe law enforcement chief would say something like that. There's a lot of stuff that's said behind closed doors that you can't say today politically because everybody's so sensitive and scary. But back to the topic at hand, the police U.S. Park police officer enters the rear of the vehicle. You got 3 or 4 Metropolitan Police Department officers, obviously not in control of the scene. Poor scene control. The individual somehow manages to drive off with the park police officer in the vehicle. Now, we all know how this is going to end. He's screaming at him, stop, let me out. First of all, why are you in the back seat of the vehicle? You know, and I know that sounds crazy, but the bottom line is if you weren't in the back seat of the vehicle, he could have just fled. Now, of course, if you do decide to shoot him at a high rate of speed, this individual can die. He can lock his foot on the accelerator and keep driving at a high rate of speed and obviously crash and kill you in the back seat where you shouldn't have been from the start as a police officer. Now, he shot the individual, obviously killed him. It's my understanding that 5 shots were fired. He fired 5 shots. You pretty much know at that point, it's not going to be a positive outcome. There was a weapon found. I'm sure it was illegal. They don't say where the weapon was found, and in reality, that's a subliminal message to kind of make light of the scene of him getting killed. The media does things like that. The question you have to ask yourself is, was the gun accessible to the suspect? The gun could actually been in the trunk, but they say things like that to kind of, improve the officer's case as far as it being a situation where the officer used deadly force in an unjustified manner. In this particular case, this could have been prevented. In my professional opinion, why were you in the back of a stolen vehicle that was occupied? I did 29 years. I've been in a lot of vehicles, but never have I had the opportunity or stupidity to get inside of an occupied stolen vehicle while someone was asleep in the driver's seat. I've had individuals that were DUI stuck at a red light just sitting there. It never crossed my mind to get in the rear of the vehicle or try to pull them out. We would tap the window, and sometimes they wake up and just pull up a little bit, and then they eventually stop, and we lock them up for DUI. But at no time did I have the urge or training to get inside of the rear of a occupied, keyword, confirmed stolen vehicle. Poor judgment on the park police officer. He discharged his weapon, I believe, 5 times. The suspect was killed. This could have been prevented, in my opinion. Of course, we can always say, well, the individual should have never stolen the car. He should have never parked there in a stolen car. This is true, but could this have been handled in a different manner? Was it handled properly? Absolutely not. Because you're not trained to enter the rear of a confirmed stolen vehicle. Now, 4 or 5 officers couldn't get this individual out of that vehicle. Somebody hesitated. Somebody didn't want to go hands-on in fear of how it would look. And maybe it was a park police officer struggling with an individual by himself. Maybe no one helped. I don't know, because you can't see that on the video. This is an example of a police situation that could have been prevented. Now, you don't hear anything about this on the news. You also keep hearing the subliminal message the gun was found. Yeah, we get that. The gun was found, but did the suspect point the gun at the officer? No. Where was the gun at? They won't even tell you where the gun was. They just want you to know that it was a gun found inside the vehicle. And let's be technical. It's no secret that police have planted evidence before, and I'm not saying that's what happened, but I have a 100% keeping it real. It could have been planted. We don't know this. Now, was it planted? Very doubtful, but the point I'm making is you have to look at it from all aspects, because the simple fact that a gun was found inside the vehicle doesn't mean it even belonged to that individual. The fact is he never pointed the gun at the officer. That's just a subliminal message to kind of justify the shooting. Although the shooting in reality possibly was justified, possibly wasn't, because the question is, why were you in the rear of a vehicle that was confirmed stolen? So yes, it could have been prevented. There's also another situation that falls into the same category. The Fairfax Police Department, and I think that falls under jurisdiction. Tyson's 1 or Tyson's 2. Individual ran off with some shades. Their urban task force, and I'm not making this up, this is what they're called. The urban task force, they had a plain clothes unit, and I'm not sure what they do. I guess they focus on urban areas of Virginia. I'm not sure, but it's the urban task force, plain clothes unit, got the call from an individual who had stolen some sunshades, and foot chase began, which led into the woods. In that process of chasing this individual in the woods, shots were fired by the law enforcement, obviously not by an individual running into the woods with the shades. He succumbed to his injuries. He was killed. Now, you don't hear a whole lot of news about this. You don't hear Ben Crump, Al Sharpton, I call them the ultimate hustlers, because certain things they don't even come out for unless it's going to be a payout or a settlement, because they'll take a percentage of it. And you don't hear the fraudulent Black Lives Matters organization jumping on this, because obviously they've been hit with a lot of their fraudulent circumstances in court. So you don't see them jumping around like they used to, But the question is, on this video that has surfaced, and I think they have released the video, there haven't been a whole lot of focus on it by the news media. This individual went into the woods and only the officers came out. Where was the threat to human life to discharge a weapon at this individual in the woods? First of all, if you lose sight of an individual going into the woods, you don't chase, you let him go, because that's what we got canine dogs for. Nobody wants to lose a canine dog. Those dogs are considered as officers, and especially to their handlers. So we wouldn't put a dog in there necessarily to get killed, but we can sacrifice a dog versus a human officer any day. And also they have the helicopter that can track into the woods, and nighttime hours they have the flares. I don't know if they work during the day. That picks up the heat sensing things that obviously coming off your body, the heat coming off your body, which can it looks like a how can I describe it? It's funny because it actually, when you look at it, and Park Police actually had them in their vehicle, you can see it. It just looks, you can see the heat from a human that's in the woods. Their flares, you can actually look. It looks like something off the Terminator, but to make a long story short, you would not enter the woods after you lose sight of an individual, because you don't know if he does have a weapon. He could be hiding behind a tree and ambush you. Let the individual go in the woods. That's what we got dogs for. Dogs will track you to hell if necessary. I've seen it done. But this individual, somehow, him and his partner go into the woods, and only those guys come out. Where was the threat to kill this individual in the woods over a pair of shades? Now, you can always use the famous, he reached for something. That's getting old, and it has gotten old. You can't use that anymore with the video footage and things that have came out after the shootings, where officers have been saw placing and moving tasers and things like that. I'm not going to pretend that officers don't do dirt, because I was an officer. You know what I'm saying? Did I do dirt? Absolutely not. There's enough criminals out here. You ain't got to do no dirt. You ain't really got to plant nothing on nobody. So, if you got a situation where it's iffy, leave it alone. He'll be back around again. I've had individuals that have gotten away that I figured, damn, I could have just chased him, but for what? I don't have no reason to chase him. I know he was dirty in my mind, but in my mind, I can't present that in court. So the individual walked away. He got away. I have no reason to search. But these particular officers chased this guy into the woods. At some point, they discharged their weapons. That is the question. Why did you discharge a weapon? At what point was he a threat? What did he do? And if my understanding of the video, you can hear him saying, "I don't have anything." So in that particular situation, if he was not armed, he did not present a threat to the officers, why did you discharge a firearm? If you cannot justify why you discharge a firearm, that's basically murder. Like I told you, anybody watch these videos, I have no alliance to law enforcement. I have no alliance to community members. My alliance is to right. You either right or you wrong. If you're wrong, I'm going to call it. If you're right, I'm going to call it. In this particular situation, what really happened in the woods? Now, you chase this guy into the woods, shots fired, only y'all come out? That's basically murder. If he posed no threat, he had no weapon, he didn't imply. Now, you can get killed without a weapon. All you got to do is say, don't come in here, I got a gun, or imply that you got a gun. That could have shot him and been justified if that was the circumstance. But this doesn't appear to be that situation. That's why I keep saying police brutality is here to stay, because situations like this, you don't even hear about on the news. And once these things kind of like go over, there's another incident and this gets washed away. A lot of times the officers beat the case. There's a settlement and these officers come back to work. Now, with the situation with park police getting inside the rear of the vehicle, poor choice. Metropolitan Police Department did it about a year ago off of Kennedy Street, which that video, from what I understand, is public as well. It wasn't a stolen vehicle. I think it was an individual with a gun or possibly running with a gun or something. Why would you get into the rear of the vehicle anyway after the person has gotten into the vehicle and is in control of the vehicle? Let the individual go, give a good description of the vehicle, tag number, last known direction of travel, and that's it. Get the helicopter up, get the officers in the scene to get a perimeter set up and things like that. But the same thing on Kennedy Street. Metropolitan Police Department officer gets in the rear of the vehicle takes off, he ends up shooting the individual one time. The individual does live, but crashes the vehicle. You shoot an individual in a moving vehicle, it's not like the vehicle's going to slow down and pull to the curb like in the movies and the guy's going to fall out and just die or stop. It doesn't work like that in real life. Now, poor choice, poor decision, just like park police. Why were you inside of the vehicle of a fleeing suspect? Poor choice. At no time in any given academy of police are you trained to do something that foolish. Enter a vehicle that a suspect is in total control of. Now, also, you have to take into consideration there was another incident, and I keep saying poor training, and of course, leads to police brutality. There was an officer in Anacostia, Metropolitan Police Department officer, had an incident. They had supposedly an assault. It took place. Lookout, I believe, was a male beating a female with a pole. This individual possibly fit the description. Got into a vehicle quickly, possibly the suspect. It ended up wasn't the suspect. The individual basically had some dope on him, and he was trying to discard the dope or hide the dope. Officer gets there, Metropolitan Police Department, asked the individual, "Let me see your hands." The individual did not let him see his hands. Didn't, the officer struggling with him in one hand, and I think he has a weapon in the other hand, which is a bad decision. He needed backup. They shouldn't have been doing anything without backup, but this is a new generation of officers. And don't get me wrong, during the 90s, we had some officers that were quite foolish, and they were very rare, though. They did things like this. This individual obviously doesn't want the officer to see his hands because he's got dope. Doesn't have a weapon. There's also an individual in the car with him. I believe it was later to be found his mother. So do you really want to discharge your weapon? And there's a passenger right there. What if this bullet goes through the suspect, and hits the female and kills her? You're going to catch that negligent homicide charge. You're going to be charged as an officer with that death. This individual discharges his weapon. Why, I don't know. Obviously, he was in fear of his life. But if he had called for backup, possibly two officers are better than one. Why? You can hear police coming in the background, his backup coming. There's some individual in his face with a cell phone. There's no safety for the officer's space or any of that. This officer allows this individual to get in his face with a cell phone, filming everything. At some point, you got to put your hands on people. I know it's not pretty, but the cell phone thing, film from a distance. You can film across the street. You can film all you want. You can film me shooting an individual if that's what you want to do, because I'm not going to hesitate on discharging my weapon in a situation that needs to be discharged. Now, obviously, I'm not shooting at someone unarmed or anything like that, but you can film me all you want. I'm not going to hesitate. But a lot of times, you still have to remain safe as an officer. You cannot allow somebody to get in your face with a camera, because that's violating your space. Yes, at some point, you have a reason of distance to be safe. If somebody's in your face with a camera phone where you can reach and touch the arm, that's too close. And I'm going hands on. Most of the officers came out with me going hands on. No, we're not slamming the individual. We're not putting our foot on his neck or nothing foolish like that. But you're going to back up. And if that means putting your hands on somebody, backing them up, that's what you do. But you don't let nobody get in arm's distance of you with a cell phone that could be possibly a weapon, and you're trying to get an individual out of a vehicle. And this guy's right beside you with a cell phone. Poor scene management, poor training. A lot of officers are very scary today, very paranoid. They don't want to lose their job. Nobody wants to lose their good government job. And believe me, it was a hell of a good job for me. And I didn't want to lose it over nothing trivial. And today you can easily lose your job in law enforcement over something trivial if it doesn't look right to the chief of police, or if it doesn't look right to the mayor or any of her affiliates. Now, I didn't say it wasn't right. I'm talking about if it doesn't look right. Now, if they think that you slammed somebody too hard that had a gun, you might be in for a ride. Because, like I said, it's political. And nothing against Chief Conti. He's a nice guy. But I understand his political affiliation. You know what I'm saying? He has to listen to the mayor. He has to say things that are not necessarily true. Like a while back, he was on the news talking about he was outraged at how an individual was punched by one of the Metropolitan Police Department officers. To make a long story short, this individual would not let go of the fence. He's on the fence, so the Metropolitan Police Department officers start beating him. What most of the public didn't know is this individual had a gun on him, and he didn't want to let go of that fence. And he was trying to, I don't know if he was trying to toss the gun or pull the gun off. So bottom line is, you do what you got to do. If it means beating the hell out of this guy on channel Fox Live, channel 5 News, Fox 5 News, then you do it, beat the hell out of him. Because I would have. And I have no cut cards or no regrets. Individual has a gun, and it's you and that individual, and you know he has a gun. Now, of course, after the video finished, you see the officer getting the gun off of him after they got it hold of him and got him under control. He had a loaded handgun on him. So what were you supposed to do? Say, oh, please get on the ground. Oh, please roll over. Play dead so I can get the gun. Doesn't work like that in the streets. You do what you got to do. The chief, the mayor, or anybody else got a problem with it, that's your problem. Because the objective, when I was out there for 29 years, and the most older sergeants would tell you, the objective is to go home in the morning the way you came. Now, obviously, you're not going out here to try to take somebody's life or maim or harm somebody. That's not what it's about. But if that means you got to do that to go home, justified. That's the key word. Justified. Not because you don't like this individual, or not because this individual you got an attitude with because he said something smart, or he called you this or he called you that. Not because of that. But if it's justified, you do what you got to do. Even if that means the medical examiner got to come get the suspect. You're going home. And by any means necessary, as long as it's the key word, justified. Now, this individual did shoot his weapon. It's my understanding that the suspect was hit, tore through a lot of organs. He's going to have multiple surgeries and things like that. I'm not sure if they consider it a justified shooting. That's something that the FIT team will do. They do investigate the shootings like that. But the key thing is, could this have been avoided? Obviously, it could have been avoided with some proper training. First of all, this individual was not supposed to be handling that situation by himself. He could have waited for backup. And when the individual took off, he could have waited, got the tag number, and given the last known direction to travel. But to try to handle that situation by himself, and there was 2 individuals in the vehicle, poor judgment, poor choice. And also, you have to look at this as obviously when somebody tells you and they're in full uniform, and a lot of these officers are very scary, let me see your hands, you might want to let them see your hands. Now, of course, you can be gangster or an outlaw or combative and tell the officer, I don't have to show you my hands, I haven't done that. You can do that. You can try that. That doesn't always work out, though. Because if you get shot, believe me, it's not like the Wild Wild West. You're going to get up and come back, your lungs or whatever that bullet hits will never be the same. You'll experience trauma for the remainder of your life. That's what a lot of these youngins don't say that's been shot multiple times, the pain and all these things that they go through. But if that's your choice to be combative when the officer said, let me see your hands, you don't want to do that because you ain't got to let them see. Trust me. Let the officer see your hands and live. You can make a complaint any day, but it's hard for you to make a complaint in ICU and the officer's going to obviously type up his version. And you already know in most cases, his version is the only version if you don't live. And that's a little different standards now because I saw him reach for something. He had something in his pocket. That's gotten old. Police officers have been using that for years. In my generation, I didn't see that. I've heard stories about it. Now, I'm being honest. And yes, with the Metropolitan Police Department. Yes, with the Metropolitan Police Department. I'm not talking during my era. I'm talking about years ago. When I came on in the 90s, they said that there were rumors that certain white officers had killed a lot of black suspects years ago. There was certain officers, they were named like, well, so-and-so. They say he killed some blacks during the riots and stuff. He never was charged with it. And I believe it happened. Of course, I don't know because I wasn't there, but do I believe some of the Metropolitan Police Department officers back in that time when racial issues were a big thing back in then, killed or shot or harmed African Americans? Absolutely, I believe it. It still goes on today. It's not as prevalent and open as it was in the 60s. In the 60s, a lot of times I talked to veteran officers, you couldn't even ride with a white officer. They didn't even want to ride with you. Now, I'm not saying all officers are like this now. Some of them are still like that. And you can pretty much tell. And yes, I'm saying it, the Metropolitan Police Department. I don't have no cut cards. You know what I'm saying? Some of the Metropolitan Police Department officers, depending on what background they come from, they may not have been around blacks, which is no excuse. But some of the individuals, you can kind of tell. They stray away and they had their own little cliques in the locker room and all that. That's a whole nother subject to go into. I'm trying to stay on brutality. But the issue is, the reason police brutality is here to stay, the lack of training, the poor decision these officers are making. They're not really training these officers how to even basically communicate. You have to be able to communicate with different ethnicities in different ways. You can't go into a black neighborhood and just, for example, just be aggressive and threatening. It's okay to just talk. It's okay to just be cool with some of the kids. A lot of these guys don't talk to these kids. They don't interact with these kids. Now you'll see the little stuff on the Twitter, and that's for public. That's for promotion and just to make it look like. But a lot of the officers that are in the streets don't really do this. And I know that their calls for service a lot of times are so much that they don't have the time to do a lot of this. But these officers a lot of times are like robots. They don't live in this city. They don't care about this city. And I'm not saying all, before somebody say, oh man, you saying all of. A lot of these officers do not live in the city. Let's get that straight first. Number two, they can't afford to live in this city. I've lived in this city long before it was affordable. Before it wasn't affordable, rather. So now I get it. The average home in DC starting at $500. Starting, and I'm not talking about no diesel. I'm talking a lot of these houses need work. They're starting at $500. Now, crime is extremely high, but the property value has not went down. Trust me, my taxes go up every single year. And I would think, well, if the crime is bringing the property value down, what's going on? The taxes, my taxes are going up every year, so property's steadily going up regardless of the crime in the city. But the training is so poor in Washington, D.C. as far as the Metropolitan Police Department. Now, I can speak on that because I was a part of the Metropolitan Police Department. Can't tell you what Park Police do, but I can tell you that it's very unlikely that they have a lot of sensitivity training and things of that nature. And when we say sensitivity training, when I say sensitivity training, I'm not referring to giving people the benefit of the doubt because they're from a different ethnicity or because they're in a poor area of DC. No, if you commit a crime, you're going. We're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt. The bottom line, if you just beat your child to a point where it's abuse, you're going to jail. I don't care about you being on public assistance, none of that. The bottom line is you committed a crime, you're going. Some things can't be swept under the carpet. You got to take that arrest and make a decision right then and there on the spot. Now, obviously, you got a situation where some kids are doing something where you can talk to them and it doesn't warrant an arrest, it doesn't always have to be that way. Talk to the kids, try. And a lot of times that's not done. You got officers that are straight robots, don't stop in these neighborhoods other than their calls for service. And nowadays, you can't really do it because in Iraq, first thing you're getting accused of being harassed. Well, hey, why is he always around here? He's around here because if he wasn't around here, you'd be saying, why the police are never around? We never see the police. So it's damn if you do, damn if you don't. But one of the biggest situations is you have an LGBT liaison with the Metropolitan Police Department. You have a Asian liaison unit, which deals with the Asian community. Sometimes there's language barriers, issues going on. You have a Latino liaison unit. And there are probably some other liaison units as well, but it's something that I brought up during training. There's no African American liaison unit with the Metropolitan Police Department. And we all know, out of all the ones I just named, the African American has the most problems with law enforcement as far as communication and a relationship. So you would think if any liaison, that would be the first one. There is none. A lot of times I would bring that up in service training during my police academy days. You know, it would be crickets. Most officers are not going to really speak on nothing like that because they just want to get through the day and just get it over with. Prime example, and I might have discussed this on one of the other topics, in service training we had some years ago, probably in the 90s, gun recognition training. You know, somebody is reaching or they walking a certain way to give you the impression that they have a weapon. It's just basically how to detect if individuals carrying a gun, the way they may walk or the way they may run or how they may turn a certain way when you're talking to them. Cool. No problem. We had it taught by one of the detectives, possibly, I don't know what unit he was from, but every single scenario on the video was of a black male with a gun. Now, I worked all over the city. And yes, white people carry guns, Hispanic people carry guns, other ethnicities carry guns. But in this particular training, there was only black males with weapons on the video. So at the end of the training, you know, I patiently wait. And in most in-service trainings, they'll always ask, does anyone have anything? Or is there any way we could have improved? Most officers won't say anything because they just want to get through it. And the ones that do want to say something don't want to make no waves. I don't really care about none of that because I could be that person to stop, and I have been stopped. So that's one of the reasons I am vocal. I said, why were there only just black people in the video? I said, I work all over the city. And I said, my assigned element is the 2nd District. I said, the majority of the individuals I come in contact with a lot of times are predominantly white. So you telling me that this is what I have to look for? It's almost equivalent to telling me, look, watch out for snakes in the jungle. Only snakes. The rest of the animals, don't worry about them, but you want to watch out for snakes. And then I get my head tore off by a tiger that you didn't train me about because I thought the tiger was cool, which is basically the same summary. You have individuals not showing a variety of different ethnicities with guns. You just showing only blacks, you know. And a lot of people don't get that. And also, there's another situation that had nothing to do with this, but most people that are familiar with going to the gun range and shooting like that, do you know they changed the target? Used to be a black silhouette, all black silhouette that you have to shoot at. Now a lot of times when you go to most academies, it's a clear colored male or the target is a clear color. It wasn't black. But for years, this target on shooting ranges was an all-black figure. It wasn't necessarily male or female, but it was an all-black figure. That's deep, right? But that's reality. They got away from that for racial, for racial sensitivity, and it's basically just common sense. Obviously, if all you shooting at is a black silhouette, when you see something black, what you gonna do? Shoot. You know? But the training is extremely poor. I have reached out to the Metropolitan Police Department Academy. I've sent emails. They don't respond to my emails. So it's not like I'm just sitting here and not saying anything. I see some of the poorest training and brutality waiting to happen because a lot of these officers don't know anything. And with this signing bonus now, it's up to $25,000. It went from 20 to 25 because they're not able to get any officers. That lets you know it's bad when they have to raise the signing bonus. You know, back in the day, academies were full. And a lot of these individuals are not staying on the streets, or they're going to other jurisdictions, or they're going back to their home state where it's maybe like 10 people. You know, I'm exaggerating, but 10 people where they can be the sheriff. Oh, you with the Metropolitan Police Department 5 years? Oh, you can be the chief of police here in this part of Carolina. You know, why would you stay here and deal with the BS that you got to deal with as far as politics? But poorly trained. I went past Kennedy Street, for example. They had about 10, 15 cars from like 3rd to Kennedy all the way to Kennedy and George Avenue just sitting there. Now, mind you, these officers are basically there for shootings. And once they leave, the shootings take place. And even sometimes while they're there, the shootings take place. The bottom line is they don't respect law enforcement, and law enforcement really is hands off now. They sit on these details. A lot of times you ride down Kennedy Street, these officers are playing on their phones. These officers sometimes sleep. Don't get me wrong. I've done my share of sleeping because on the Metropolitan Police Department, sometimes you get out of court at 5 o'clock in the evening. Guess what? You got to be back at work at 9 o'clock, a 9:30 roll call. So out there in the streets, now I'm not saying sleep on Kennedy Street. You're going to have some areas where you can get some rest because you do not want to crash your car or get caught slipping and make a poor decision or kill somebody and get killed because you had a lack of sleep. And sometimes you just can't take off every time you're tired. It doesn't work like that. And it would be wonderful if you could call a sergeant and say, Sergeant, I was in court till 5 o'clock. Is there any way I can get to 8? Yeah, okay. 4 other people just called in. You know, it doesn't work like that. It's not a regular job. And well, like I said, the poorest training right now, they're focused on more or less getting numbers and getting officers on the street more than anything. So a lot of corners are being cut. At one time, they would have community members come to the academy and talk to the police officers and tell them what they had problems with, and officers would able to exchange dialogue and tell the community what they had problems with and things like that. But nowadays they don't want any of that because it has gotten a little bit aggressive between citizens and police. But you have to have that dialogue. You have to have the dialogue because a lot of these individuals that are coming to Washington, D.C. to police, some of them have never been in black communities in their life. Never. And that shouldn't matter because the people are human. But a lot of times come from a place, maybe in Utah or somewhere where you have never seen anybody black, and then you're in a neighborhood policing, that doesn't always work out well. It really does. A lot of these individuals are scary. They have no problem pulling that trigger with the quickness. They have no problem talking down to you. They have no problem violating your rights or anything else. So a lot of times the poor training, the training is repetitive. I mean, you go to the academy most of the time for your in-service training, but it's basically repetitive. I mean, you're doing scenarios in reference to a active shooter. I mean, don't get me wrong, that stuff never gets old. But on the same note, why not input some community-related things or interact with some children or do something fun? During this whole in-service training, there's no type of activity where the officers get to just let their head down for one day and just, hey, man, we're going to come in here. Y'all got to play in the gym. Y'all want to bring ball. You can do that. No uniforms. Whatever, the guns will be locked up. Just enjoy that last day of nothing but letting your head down. Maybe have something catered that day, you know, for the officers. They don't do anything like that. It's just repetitive BS most of the times. And of course, a lot of it is to cover the police department. But what happens when you don't give officers an outlet? You get basically bombs working. The officer that's showing up to your house is basically sometimes a time bomb. You don't know what he or she is going through at home. You don't know that he's on his 15th hour because he couldn't get off because the leave book is full and leave book has been marked out. No leave for this particular day because there's a protest. So they're restricted. So this officer might be not on his 15th, not necessarily just on his 15th hour, but on his 15th day straight, working straight. I've done that. You know, but you have to have some form of outlet. They don't give you an outlet. And that's why a lot of times you have officers making split-second decisions. A lot of them are sleepy. A lot of them are tired, fatigued, mentally and physically. And the department doesn't address that. They never have. Now, you might see what do you call it? The chaplain, priest, whatever you want to call it. They'll show up to roll call if some officer gets killed or something traumatic happens to an officer. I always ask, how come you guys never come just to come? To ask us, do we have any problems or anything like that? I would always ask at the end of every time they come, we lose an officer to maybe a heart attack, not necessarily a line of duty death, but a heart attack or something like that. We lose one of our officers, to a sudden death or illness, cancer. They would come and ask, do we need to talk to anybody? But I would always ask, how come you guys only come when something happens? Why can't you just come some nights, a roll call, just to talk and just, hey, look, man, I just want to say a prayer for you officers, and you risk your lives or whatever. Why not just come and say that? Or, hey, does anybody need to talk or need to pray, anybody to pray for one-on-one? I'm here after roll call. That's it, and leave. But why you only show up when somebody dies or whatever? Just basically a negative situation. They never show up, ahead of time just to try to prevent these situations. A lot of times, if some of these chaplains and priests or whatever came to the roll calls to talk to some of the officers without it being necessarily death or whatever, things could possibly go a little further as far as the positive aspect, but they don't. The police department is a reactive organization, just like most organizations. They're not going to do anything until something goes wrong. And in service training, they don't talk about eating right. They don't talk about drinking water. They don't talk about telling you, hey, look, if your urine is dark and eliminated, you're not on vitamins or medication, you're dehydrated. It's a lot of things they don't talk about. It's almost like, well, we don't tell them that because, we want them to hopefully not make it to retirement. Or if they make it to retirement, they don't collect checks for too long. But the point I'm making is, when it all relates to police brutality, is improper training and the lack of training. So you got a lot of officers that are obviously coming to DC now because they are lacking law enforcement officers with the retirement and just the decline in the interest in law enforcement. So you're going to get your police brutality. It's going up even higher because these officers don't know what they're doing. I mean, a prime example is, like I said, the recent situation with the officer getting in the rear of the vehicle and having the killer individual shot 5 times off of 295 U.S. Park Police. Had another situation where Fairfax, I guess that's the jurisdiction, Tyson's 1 or Tyson's 2, chased this individual into the woods, unarmed. The officers come out of the woods, the individual does. He's killed in the woods. What really happened? The situation over here in Anacostia with Metropolitan Police Department, he discharged his weapon. There's a passenger on the other side, or there's a driver on the other side. Either way, it's 2 persons in the car. You shoot an individual in the car, and there's another passenger. That bullet could have easily went through that individual and struck the passenger or the driver. Then you're charged with that as well if the person dies or if the person is shot. Poorly training revolves around all of this. Why was this officer in this particular situation, Anacostia, with no backup? Why was he trying to get this individual with his gun in his right hand or one hand free? What are you going to have to do if this individual puts hands on you? You got to holster that weapon. You got to do something with that gun. Then you're in a position where you have no choice but to shoot. Poor training. If you watch the video, you can see this very officer, after he's involved in the shooting, picking up his rounds after he's shot. Now, that's a crime scene. That's poor training. You can't shoot somebody and then pick your rounds up or do anything. That's a crime scene. You have to leave that as it is. If anything, somebody else, you've been involved in a shooting, you wouldn't actually do it. But if you've been involved in a shooting, somebody has to make that a crime scene and rope all that off. Because they have to investigate that like any other shooting. But you don't pick your shell cases up as a police officer. I don't know if he just was in shock or whatever, but come on now. That's just another poor choice, poor training. The situation where the officers beat the individual to death on camera recently. Now, that was, to me, in my opinion, was a little more to that. But the crazy thing is these officers were on video. Everybody had their body-worn activated cameras, and there was a crime camera above them. So how do you do something like this, first of all, period? And then you do it under the camera, the crime camera, and everybody has the body-worn cameras, and then you all basically laugh and joke about it after this individual is dead. You can see the officers getting tired of beating them. To do something like that, first of all, lets you know that this wasn't the first time they did it. They've done it many a time. They just got caught this time. There are many rogue departments with rogue officers that are in cliques. And yes, Metropolitan Police Department has them. Most of them are very young. And I'm not going to say that the majority of them are all white. A lot of times they're mixed. But a lot of times you have to meet a certain category to fit in that clique. A lot of them are young. They don't have their own minds, and a lot of times they'll have a sergeant there's pretty much a dictatorship. Whatever they tell them to do, they do it, and it's that type of situation. But a lot of these individuals that you see, in the majority of them are, I know in Metropolitan Police Department when I was on, the gun running units, the plainclothes units, a lot of them were predominantly white. Man, I'm just gonna keep it 100 with you. There wasn't a lot of mixed plainclothes units and things like that. And even if the ones there were, that doesn't make it any better. They specifically targeted predominantly black areas. Now, their areas, DuPont Circle, their areas in other affluent areas of Washington, D.C. that they never target. And everybody knows Georgetown, I don't know about now, Georgetown had the most weight when it came to drugs. As far as all those little stores down there, a lot of those were fronts. Everybody knew that. I don't know if citizens knew it, but within the Metropolitan Police Department, we knew it. But a lot of times when you think of drugs, you're thinking about maybe the 6th District, maybe the 7th District, maybe you're thinking off Benning Road. No, I'm thinking Wisconsin Avenue. Those guys that stand on Wisconsin Avenue back in the 90s, they just stood there all day when the rent back then was like $7,000 or $8,000 a month sometimes. Then they selling no clothes. You got these shops that supposedly selling silk and linen suits, but nobody's ever in there. But these guys are standing out front all day. Come on now. You know what was going on. They're fronts. But that's another topic. I just wanted to really bring up this police brutality. It's a real serious issue, and it is here to stay because there's no accountability. It's to the point now when it happens, people just move on with their day and accept it. And by no means is it acceptable. It shouldn't be acceptable, period. But of course, it's definitely not acceptable when it's your loved one laying there pronounced dead because of something that the police could have did differently to prevent that. Now, of course, we all know in these situations, if the individual hadn't stole the shades, I've seen some people put that online. Well, if he hadn't stole the shades, he would be living. Come on now. It's a pair of shades. It's a property crime. This isn't another country where you can kill somebody over property crime or some country that doesn't have any types of moral standards or moral laws. This is America. You can't, even in law enforcement, you can't kill an individual over some property from a law enforcement aspect. You can't do it if the individual is unarmed or doesn't present a life-threatening situation. You can't do it. Bottom line is. And if they don't come up, I don't know what they coming up with for that one. But chased him into the woods, shots fired, he's dead, and the officers come out of the woods. Where was the threat? Prime example with the Anacostia situation with Metropolitan Police Department. Discharged his weapon. There was a passenger on the other side of it was a passenger in that vehicle. Could have hit the individual. What was the threat? I get he's not showing his hands, but in reality, that's a little iffy. You know what I'm saying? You have to really, really, really prove that you fear for your life. But on the same note, is it proper for an officer to take action without his backup arriving when you have 2 suspects in the vehicle? No, you're really supposed to wait. Poor tactical decision upon the Metropolitan Police Department. Once again, same situation with Metropolitan Police Department in 4D. About a year ago, I think they chased an individual with a gun into a car. He jumped in the car. Metropolitan Police Department officer jumps in the back seat. Poor tactical decision. Poor training. He goes for the ride of his life. He shoots the individual one time in the back. The individual crashes, which is to be expected. If you get shot while you're driving, you're going to crash. I don't know what the circumstances were, around in that, or if the officer was charging anything, or if they settled or whatever. But of course, that all went away. I'd say it again. A lot of these things happen, and police brutality is here to stay because it's no consequences. As soon as it happens, it's a story for a hot minute, and then something else happens. I'm going to get into crime and really go into some real deep topics, like, for example, just a brief analysis. There was a shooting at a funeral on Benning Road, I believe it was Seward Funeral Home. Now, allegedly, and I can't confirm this yet, the family supposedly, according to the news, and the news is not always right, but allegedly the family requested police presence in reference to this, with anticipation that there might be some type of retaliation or some type of get back. And from what I understand, they say an officer was present, or officers, but a lot of times we all know these officers on these details are really just like, they're equivalent to putting a stuffed cat in the kitchen for mice. It's worthless. They're pointless. You see these officers all over Kennedy Street every time you ride up and down. They're just sitting there playing on their phones. Some of them asleep. Some of them standing outside of the carryout on Kennedy Street by the Rainbow Market. And the youngins steadily smoking weed. The weed is so extensive you can smell it even if you got your air conditioner on and you go through Kennedy Street. So no law is being enforced. But the point I'm making is it's pointless. And if these individuals requested police presence at this funeral and this took place or what have you, not saying that you can't still be shot with police presence, but where were the police located? If they were even there. If they were even there, where they were supposed to be. That's the key question. But we're going to go into that when I discuss some crime. But keep in mind, police brutality is here to stay. I know that's kind of hard for somebody to accept, but man, I can't believe you said that. I'm being brutally honest because there's no accountability. Yes, there's cameras and things of that nature, but when it all boils down to it, as soon as it goes off the news, we're going with our life. Like I said, the individual that stole the shades, prime example, I'm just going to use that. There are many others that you don't know about and I don't know about because a lot of times, depending on the law enforcement agency, they keep that under wraps and they sweep it under the carpet. But this individual that was killed in Tyson, you don't even hear no talk about that. This individual was chased into the woods and killed in the woods like an animal. Remind you, yeah, he stole the shades, but where was his gun? Or have they found one yet by now? It's been a while, so they might have found something in the woods. If you give them time enough, and this has been done. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not being sarcastic because these things have actually happened. Just like the subliminal message with the Park Police on 295, a gun was found inside of the vehicle. Was the gun really inside the vehicle? Did the Park Police put the gun in the vehicle? Did the Metropolitan Police Department put it in the vehicle? Now I'm saying these things, not saying that that's what happened, but I'm saying them because these types of scenarios have happened where officers have placed guns inside of vehicles. I'm just one to tell you that it's reality and it really does happen. And it's not going to stop happening. Neither is police brutality because there are no consequences. All we do is go on with our life after it happens. Maybe some protesting. Now you don't even get to protest no more. This individual had a press conference in reference to being killed in Tyson's. But other than that, the Urban Task Force. You don't hear a whole lot about them. You know, this isn't like one of the Muriel Bowser crusades where she's going to, demand this or these officers and politicians in Virginia stand by their law enforcement agencies even when they're wrong. And clearly, this is a situation where something went wrong if the individual wasn't armed. And from what I understand, you can hear him on body worn camera saying I don't have anything. But he still killed? Sounds like murder to me. Like I said it before, a lot of people might be like, oh man, I can't believe you talk like that, man. You used to be a police officer. Whose side you on? I'm on the side of the right. You either right or you're wrong. I don't care about you being no police officer. I don't care about you being no citizen. You either right or you wrong. Now, if it's a situation where you run into the woods and you trying to toss a gun, for example. Now, I'm just saying this is a scenario. This is not what happened. Because if this is what happened, the Virginia police would have clearly put that out. If the individual tried to toss a gun and he was killed in the process of that, I get it. Maybe he was trying to toss the gun. Maybe he was trying to turn that gun and fire at the officers. No one knows if that was a scenario. So yes, in that particular case, you're going to use deadly force. But that's not the case in this particular situation. They're not saying really what happened. They're just keeping it quiet. And if you notice, the news doesn't even focus on it. We don't focus on it. I'm focusing on it because all I got is a little video I can do or speak on it from this aspect, but I'm not forgetting it. Because the bottom line is, when it all boils down to it, what would you do if that was your son in the woods laying there dead, bleeding out over some shades? Yeah, it was a poor choice on the youngin going out there stealing the shades, but we've all done some things in our life that we're not proud of. I know I have. I'm just keeping it 100, but police brutality is here to stay. If you feel that it's not, you're welcome to comment. You're welcome to disagree. Put it in the comments and I will respond because it's here to stay because it's being accepted. And it's not going to get no better. Have you seen some of the police officers in the Metropolitan Police Department Academy? I know you haven't. I have. That's why I'm making this video. Before the summer's over, it'll be another situation. It'll be multiple situations. And some will involve Metropolitan Police Department. But just remember that I told you before it happens. It's going to happen. Because like I said, did you see what's in the Metropolitan Police Department's academy? Do you know how desperate the Metropolitan Police Department ought to have officers? I do. And they're cutting some corners when it comes down to training. What I'm saying will reveal itself this summer. I'm gone, y'all.